Hello, and welcome to an overall intro guide to Monster Hunter Wilds. I've been playing Monster Hunter since it was on the PSP, so safe to say I know quite a bit. This is less of a weapon-specific guide, and more of a walkthrough as to how to play the game against monsters, and just how to go into the game in general. If you're looking for weapon-specific tutorials, I highly recommend channels like Gaijin Hunter and Eric's Gaming. I've been watching them for years, and I will be making my own videos on those as well, but that's going to come a little later, or probably at the launch of the full game. All of my guides are going to be talking with controller in mind. Monster Hunter, in my opinion, has always been made for controller, and the PC controls, or scheme I guess, just never really worked for me, so I never tried to play with PC, and so I'm not going to make any videos with that either. Once you're done selecting the character, you'll get shown these tips. Display All will show you literally everything, including recommendations with your weapon, as well as just certain things to do in certain situations. It's really good if you're brand new. Display Some probably will only mention things about your weapon, or new mechanics like the focus mode, etc. I'm just gonna leave everything on for the sake of, understanding. Alrighty, we finally have access to our character. Let's go over the quick and simples. So, first up, if you look at your whole HUD, top left, you're going to be HP bar on the top in green. It's going to have stamina underneath in yellow. Anytime you do any action that consumes stamina, it'll naturally go down, like sprinting. Right below that is going to be your weapon sharpness. So, weapon sharpness is like you can imagine how sharp your weapon is. As you use your weapon to attack things, it'll naturally deplete and go down. In order to keep it or to maintain it, you need to use whetstones, which you can use through the item wheel, or you can use as an item itself. On the left side, where you see your cat name, is going to be where your party is, so if you're playing with friends, all of them are going to show up there, and it'll be able to show you their entire HP bar as well. On the right is going to be your current objective, Desert Trotters, talk to Alma, and if you look on the top right as well, you'll have a list of your current available actions, as well as the button prompts to do them. On the bottom left is going to be your map, as well as the current daytime, and I believe that's weather, not super sure. And on the bottom right is going to be your item tab, or item bar. In order to access these, you can hold L1 and it'll extend your item bar. You can use the buttons, the face buttons on the left and right to cycle between items, and whenever you cycle to one, you can let go and hit X or your left face button to use. In addition, there is the item wheel, which is a shortcut that you can use instead of the item bar. It was added in World and has been one of my more favored quality of life improvements. It allows you to, like I said, access things without having to cycle through your bar and look for them instead. Let's go over some neutral actions now. As you can tell, you can run around. If you hold R1, you'll be able to sprint, and you have full control over your camera as well as your character. When you want to dodge, if you're standing still, you can hit the bottom face button to crouch. This reduces the noise you make as well as your stature, so monsters won't see you as often. And if you're moving in a direction, or hold in a direction, and hit A, you'll do an invade. This is a roll and has iframes along with the roll. If you're standing still and you hit the Y or top face button, you'll pull out your weapon in this way. If you're moving and you hit the Y button, you'll automatically do a drawing attack, like so. With your weapon sheath, you can also hold L2 and it brings up the slinger section of your abilities. Equip something and then shoot with the RT, left trigger, R trigger, or you can even zoom in and press B to grab things from a distance. It's very useful, especially if you're just passing by and want to go ahead and pick up some of the stuff. You can also do this while riding your mount, so it's a good thing to do while just traveling around. Now let's go over weapon neutral. As soon as you're able to play the game, you're able to talk to Alma, and she even has some questions for you if you want to go over which weapon you're interested in doing. Of course, I play all of them, so it doesn't really matter for you, but this might be a good place to start, and I recommend just trying them out and seeing what you get. Once you've picked a weapon that you consider good for you, which I don't actually. Once you have your weapon all picked and good, you're all set to try it out. Just press buttons, see on the top right, see how it works, and get a good feel for the weapon. The universal options for all weapons include a dodge, which may change depending on the weapon you're using, as well as a new focus mode, which allows you to point your character in the direction that your camera is facing. Previously, this was not available in the series, so if you were attacking the wrong way, you had to turn and try to turn around, but now, because of it, you can press the focus button and turn your camera to change the direction of your attacks. It's very useful. Weapons usually have 3 buttons that are assigned to combat. It's going to be the top face button, which is Y or triangle, the right face button, circle or B, and right trigger. Depending on the weapon, it'll do different things, and different combinations of these buttons will also perform different actions. For example, I have a rising slash, a side slash, and if I press both of those buttons together, I'll get a forward advancing slash. Play around with your weapon a little bit and attack the barrel and you'll be good to go. Now let's go over the basics of combat. We're going to have different states to describe certain aspects of combat, so just bear with me for a little bit. The first one's going to be neutral. This is just your standard standing with or without your weapon drawn. When you do this, you are capable of dodging in any direction when your weapon is sheathed. You can also aim your slinger, grab things, as well as shoot your slinger ammo, whatever is currently equipped. Once you have your weapon out, things change a little bit, but not too much. So let's go over dodging now. When it comes to dodging, the main things you want to know is that their dodges do have iframes in them, so if you perfectly time a dodge, you can simply dodge an attack by going through it with your iframes, or you can dodge to get out of the way of stuff. When you have a weapon equipped, your dodge can change depending on the weapon you have. The standard dodge is the roll as well, but there are also different dodges including sidesteps, hops, trigger dodges, and diving dodges. Sidestep and hop dodges are the signature dodges with weapons that usually carry a shield. So like weapons like gun lance will have side dodges or side hops instead of the normal roll. This is mainly because of how bulky the weapon is. You're not really going to be moving quite well with the weapon, so it's usually recommended to block more than it would be to dodge, but you still have the dodges for mobility and repositioning. Some weapons like Charged Blade have the traditional dodge in neutral stance, but whenever you're doing certain attacks, you actually have only the sidestep as a dodge option. It's recommended to experience between your weapons and figure out what options are available whenever you have to dodge. The next 2 dodges are only available during combat or during certain conditions. The first is going to be conditional or trigger dodges, which activate especially when you are about to get hit. They're essentially timed dodges that reward you for properly timing your dodge in accordance to an enemy's attack. We're going to be using this guy, for example. So, for the bow, whenever you do standardly, you have a normal dodge that works similar to any other weapon. When you're aiming in, however, you get a unique dodge that charges an arrow. If you time this dodge correctly with getting attacked, you end up getting a different animation that is very unique and is triggered. It's so much easier to do it when you're like just playing. There you go. Dodges like this are very useful for these weapons as they allow you to be more aggressive and react to the enemy while doing constant damage. Another weapon that has dodges similar to this is the Dual Blade, which has a dashing strike whenever you correctly perform the dodge. The next type of dodge is only available in combat with a big monster, and you have to have your weapon sheathed. This is called the diving dodge and is one of the most iframed dodges in the game. In order to perform it, you have to be running away from the monster and you have to press the dodge button. These are your normal dodges, and the dive dodge looks something like this. It's a super dive and is very, very safe. And you can even do it when the monster's not directly attacking you, but it does have a proximity, I guess. Whee! Like I said, this dodge has the most iframes out of any of them, and it's super safe, and is one of your panicked options if you end up in a bad scenario. You do have to sheath your weapon first, so it might take a little while, but the dodge comes out very quick, and it's essentially instant. Next, let's go over guarding. There are 3 types in this game. The first is going to be a regular block or guard, where you just hold the shield out in front of you. These are directional, so you need to be sure you're facing the attack or else your block won't work. Blocking is dependent on the size of your shield or the weapon, so Lance and Gunlance have the best blocking in the game. Charge Blade comes in around second, and Sword and Shield has the weakest block. The other type of block is called a perfect guard, which essentially triggers when you time your block just before an attack is going to hit you. Whenever you perform this, you get access to different combo routes or special moves, so it's usually good to work towards being able to do it, and it's an advanced property to guarding if you don't just want to sit here and wait for the attack to come. The final guard is a conditional guard or a special guard that triggers whenever you do certain actions. An example of this is with Charge Blade, as they have things called guard points. Basically, whenever you do certain moves and your shield is out in front of you and shines like so, it'll automatically guard an attack. This guy just... don't mind him. There are also different animations to get into this, so for example, swapping from Sword and Shield to Axe mode has a guard point as well, swapping back has a guard point, and after the spinning roundhouse has a guard point. These work similar to a perfect guard and will allow you to do different combos or different routes to your combos if you successfully perform them. Next up, we have attacking. This is going to be anytime you're attacking the monster. Your normal attacks are going to be Y or triangle, the top face button, or B, circle, the right face button. Each weapon has very unique moves and move sets, so you're going to have to get used to your own specific weapon in order to understand them fully. But anytime you're attacking the boss, this is called attacking. Each weapon has, or each move I should say, has startup frames, active frames, and ending frames. A key thing to keep in mind is that ending frames usually last pretty long depending on how big the swing is. So with this, I'm holding to the right, and as soon as I'm able to move, that's the end of the ending frame. A little trick here is that dodging usually can cut off the majority of the ending frames for a lot of moves, meaning that dodging ends up being a little quicker than it is to just wait for the move to end. This is true for pretty much everything, but if your weapon's really quick, you probably won't notice the difference between just walking out. Especially when it comes to fighting a monster, you really want to keep in mind that not only do you have startup, active, and ending animations, the monsters do as well. Because of this, properly recognizing certain moves will give you an upper hand and give you times to attack. For example, he's gonna swing his tail, and I decided to get hit by it just in the face. But if I recognize certain moves, I'm able to attack him in place of, well, getting hit instead. After this, he always lands, so I get free attacks with no cost to with no threat to my life. This is a slam, I can go behind him, and then I get free attacks right here with no issue and no chance he's gonna attack me. This is a wide slash that, once again, is very slow, so I kind of prematurely blocked it, and I got hit for it. Understanding the monster more than your own attacks is usually going to lead to the biggest gain when it comes to playing this game. Now let's go over something you might end up being very familiar with, and that is getting hit. There are multiple ways to get hit. Some are little slaps, some just take up your HP, and some are huge attacks which will knock you out and put you on the ground. Let's see, that's a simple quick attack and it puts me on the back. That's a little stab. This will knock me straight on the ground. And I actually have a little bit of recovery animation. I don't know if you saw that. Anytime you get hit by an attack, your options are to simply wait until you get up, or you can actually roll out of a lot of the options and cancel some of their end life. Now that we discussed all the general stuff about the game, I'm going to be fighting multiple monsters and talking about what I'm thinking about or what I believe you should think about while going through the game. Alrighty, let's put what we talked about in practice. So right now I'm in neutral stance, right? I'm very mobile, very reactive, and I'm pretty sure this person can't touch me. It don't matter what okay, you know what? So against monsters like this, right, they hit very soft, they aren't very mobile. They have very slow attacks, so it's very easy to just maintain offense the entire time. It's very rare that you're going to... Oh, that was cool. It's very rare that you're going to need to actually dodge or be forced into neutral stance or anything like that. And you can take tons of hits from this guy, so your ratio between like stances compared to everything else is going to be a lot on offense, a lot of attacking, a lot of getting there, and then every now and then you'll move out the way, right? Or a lot of times when I move, it'll simply be for positional advantage. Like let's say I want to be attacking the other part of him. I'll roll to him, instantly start attacking. Let's say I want to go to the back. I'll roll twice to get to the back. This is mainly what I use roll for against enemies like this. They're very easy. You don't have to worry about it too much, and you just kind of have a good time, right? Once you wound a monster enough, you'll actually see skulls on their little icon on the bottom left, and it means that they're going to run away and try to sleep. Sometimes they take stops before they get to their sleeping ground, or sometimes they just walk straight to it. Sleep is a little important, or at least there's a mechanic involved with it, where the first attack that they receive when sleeping will actually do double damage. Because of this, a very common practice is to place bombs in front of the monster while they're sleeping, and then break the bombs along with an attack. If you have very hard-hitting weapons, like let's say a greatsword or a hammer, it's often better to use those weapons to actually wake them up than a bomb. But since I'm using a sword and shield, usually the bomb is going to be a better option majority of the time. And once you kill or capture the monster, that's going to be the entirety of the quest. In the beta, you can carve, but you won't be able to keep any of these items, so instead you can go ahead and press the select button and you can instantly end the quest. As you rise up in difficulties, monsters are going to be a little bit more aggressive and usually have wider attacks or larger area of effects. These monsters are going to force you to dodge a lot more often, and you might have to get punished for using big, strong attacks sometimes, but it's not guaranteed. One of the main things you want to do as you rise up through the difficulty of Monster Hunter is actually kind of understand and look at the monster quite a bit instead of your own character. The idea is you're supposed to have control over your character and knowledge over the monster. What is that? Wait, no, come back. I was talking. As you get more comfortable with the monsters, and as you get more reliable with the monsters, the difference between the amount of time you spend dodging and healing or getting hit usually goes down, and the amount of time that you spend hitting the monster will go up as your skill progresses. The final tier for monsters I would say are available during the beta is going to be this guy, and I'd consider him a pretty hard monster. He attacks very hard, he has a variety of different attacks, and he moves pretty quick as well. When fighting these type of monsters, especially during my first time, sometimes I just kind of sheath my weapon and just see all the different attacks and moves he's able to do. When I have my weapon sheath, it's pretty much impossible for me to get hit most of the time because I just know my options. And if things really go bad, I can always do the Superman dive. See? But like I said, learning how to dodge the monsters is one of the biggest key points to actually being able to do good damage against them. Once you understand how their toolkit works, which direction to dodge, you can stay in very close proximity and do a lot of damage without worrying too much about getting hit. All of these moves I've seen before, and all of these moves I know how to dodge correctly to where I'm able to continually attack the monster, and I'd get tons of hits. So let's put that in action. That was a little slow. Good job, me. I really showed him. The main thing with these monsters is they usually don't give you a lot of breathing room, especially after the first time you get hit. So it's very likely that they'll probably kill you if it's your first couple times and you're not very experienced with how the monster works. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting your weapon away and just having a quick little breather and understanding where or when you can attack the monster. Oh, you might have accidentally landed on the back of a monster when doing a jump attack. I kind of forgot to explain this. There are two positions on each monster, and you can move between the two positions with your left analog stick. One of them is usually the body, and the other is usually the head. When you're on the monster, You can break their back and try to wound it. Once it's wounded, you can do a draw finisher with R1 that will knock the monster into the ground, and usually do a ton of damage as well. This is universal for each monster and each weapon, so not much changes depending on what you're using or who you're fighting. And you usually get pretty good time to do a cool attack right after. Now I'm going to go over a basic overview of monsters. Monsters have multiple parts in their body, and if a monster has an extended tail, it's usually that you can cut it with a cutting weapon. If you're using a blunt weapon, which is kind of like the sword and shield, it has a shield and it has attacks that are blunt weapons, you can attack the monster's head to inflict blunt damage, which usually causes them to move a little slower, get tired, and you're able to knock them out once you hit them enough. So for the blunt damage, I'm always gonna aim for the head in order to get a knockout on the monster. I try not to use my shield on any other part of the body because I'm trying to focus on a specific spot. Those staggers mean that I'm doing a good job, and eventually I'll score a KO. So now he's on the ground and he's motionless, I'm going to start heading to the tail because I want to cut it off. Understanding not only why you're hitting things, but where to hit them is kind of a good part about this game as well. Not everything is just hack and slash, and it kind of does matter which spots of the body you're hitting. For example, weapons have bonuses and de-bonuses depending on the spots that you hit, and monsters have hard parts as well as soft spots, so hitting in certain spots will lead to more damage or less damage. For example, on this guy, his head and his tail are weak spots, whereas his legs and I think back are actually hard spots, so they do less damage. It's very easy to tell these because of the number. If the number is white, that means it's not a good spot to hit them. If it's a darker color, that means it's really not a good spot to hit them. But if the number shows as a yellow, it means that it's a weak spot, and it's actually usually pretty good for your weapon to attack that area. Although it might seem tedious to continuously attack one spot over and over again, some drops only come from certain broken parts. So for example, let's say I really wanted a tail from this guy to make a weapon. I'd have to cut off his tail, and then once I carve the tail, I actually can get a higher percentage of achieving a tail. Alrighty, that's gonna be it for the— oh my god, those rocks look like Play-Doh. Okay. Oh, everything looks like Play-Doh. It's probably because I loaded. 1 second. And that's gonna be it for my basic combat overview. I can and probably will be making guides on each individual weapon, and maybe can even do some tips and tricks on certain monsters. But I really just wanted to give a general guide on how to actually approach the game because I know it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And even though there's lots of tips and useful tips as well, when you actually get in front of a monster, it can be a little tough to transition from swinging into the air to swinging at a living thing that's also trying to kill you. Well, that's the end of the guide. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one, and I'll be trying to make a lot, especially when the game actually comes out. Bye!